Yes, indeed. So let's start with what we know so far, particularly the two big picks by Donald Trump for his top post in his administration. I'm talking about the Attorney General nominee, Jeff Sessions, and his nominee for National Security Advisor, General Michael Flynn. So any idea, and you heard so many people say, well, now that he's elected, we're going to see the real Donald Trump. This is a different Donald Trump, right? He's not the hardliner and the extremist that he appeared to be during the campaign. That was just rhetoric. That was just big talk. You just watch. Give him a chance, and he's going to prove that he's really an okay kind of person and a reasonable person. No freaking way. No freaking way, given the nominations of Jeff Sessions and Michael Flynn. You could not get two people more extreme nor more unfit for those posts than Jeff Sessions for Attorney General and Michael Flynn for National Security Advisor. I mean, where do we start? Let's start with Jeff Sessions, okay? I mean, here's a man, remember, who was rejected by a Republican-controlled Senate back in 1986 because he was such a racist. And now he's going to be named to head the Justice Department? Oh, my God.
Think about how racist you've got to be to get denied by the Republicans
Yeah.
in 1986.
Yeah, right.
That's racist. That's really racist.
For the things that he said and did at the time, including charging volunteers for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, right, founded by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who were registering voters, charging them with breaking the law, basically, and inciting not violence, but stirring things up or whatever, just by registering voters. This is a man. So here's a man who's charged with enforcing the Voting Rights Act, who opposed the Voting Rights Act, and who called it an intrusive act. This is a man who called the Southern Christian Leadership Conference a communist-inspired organization. This is a man who said, I was okay with the KKK until I learned that some of them smoke pot. He. Yeah, a big joke. I mean, this is a man who opposes marriage equality. This is a man who says that waterboarding is fine. This is the man who supports a religious test and a registry for all Muslims in this country, a man who's supposed to be defending our constitutional rights, who's on record as willing to undermine them across the board. I mean, he is the exact opposite of what you would expect from an attorney general in terms of enforcing the Constitution and protecting the rights of all Americans. And Donald Trump wants him to be our attorney general.
On your comment about the voter stuff that he got in trouble with, I just want to read quickly about that story. In 1985, Sessions prosecuted 3 African-American community organizers in the Black Belt of Alabama, including Martin Luther King Jr.'s former aide, Albert Turner, for voter fraud. The prosecution stirred charges of selective prosecution of black voter registration and was based on no more than 14 tampered ballots. The defendants were quickly acquitted. Now, Sessions was asked about, because it was a total joke of a case. In 2009, Sessions was asked about this again, and he says, I did the right thing, but I failed to make the case. So he still thinks that he did the right thing.
Right. And people can say, okay, 1986, that was a long time ago, all right? But he hasn't changed since.
He's only gotten worse.
His positions today are just as bad. His position about Muslims is today, right? His position about the Voting Rights Act is today, not 30 years ago. A totally unfit, unqualified for the position. And then you have Michael Flynn. All right. Now, let's just be honest about one thing. Michael Flynn has been nominated for National Security Advisor, former General Michael Flynn, because he could never get confirmed at any job. He is so radical, so extreme, such a hardliner. Here again is a man who was fired. And people generally give him a pretty good job for being in charge of driving ISIS out of Iraq and out of Syria when he was on that beat, I guess, before they relocated in Syria. But at any rate, was given credit for that. But then he was made head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and he did such a lousy job, he was fired. He was fired by James Clapper, the National Intelligence Chief, for mismanagement, for abusing, verbal abuse of people and just being impossible to work with. And then Michael Flynn just basically has spent the last 4 or 5 years attacking President Obama, declaring that ISIS is not only our number one enemy, but equating all Muslims with being radical extremist terrorists, if you will, denying that Islam is a religion at all. In fact, he said it's a political operation. Here he is just this last August in Dallas.
Islam is a political ideology. It is a political ideology. It definitely hides behind this notion of it being a religion.
Yeah, no, Islam, not a religion at all, which runs counter to everything that the United States has said and stands for going back to the days of George W. Bush, if not before. This is also the man at the Cleveland Convention with the Republicans this year from the podium who led the chants of lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. This is a man who was, as a consultant, had a contract representing the government of Turkey, which is hardly a model democracy these days. He was their consultant. He was their lobbyist here in Washington, D.C. And this is also a man who went to Moscow not so long ago as a guest of Vladimir Putin. Well, I should say on Vladimir Putin's payroll, was given a great big fat fee to go over there to celebrate I think it was the 50th anniversary, whatever anniversary, of RT, the Russian TV network, and sat at the dinner table right alongside of Vladimir Putin. So this is the guy, and again, an extreme hardliner who's going to be, and I've learned this in my coverage of the White House, that the most important position of all on national security is a national security advisor, because that national security advisor is right there in the White House. And everything that comes in from the Department of Defense, the Secretary of State, the National Intelligence Director, the Homeland Security Agency, it all comes to the National Security Advisor, who is the filter then for what goes to the president, that this is important and this is what we have to act on. And this one you can kind of, it's important, but you can kind of wait for a bit on this one. He's the guy that sets the priorities, and it'll be this hothead, Michael Flynn, more of a hothead than Donald Trump. And in that position, you don't need a hothead. You need somebody who's cool and rational, like a Susan Rice, like Condi Rice. Condi Rice was a good national security advisor. Not him.
On top of all of that, which is all enough to exclude him from this position, he also appears to be a moron in that he has shared multiple fake news stories on his Twitter account.
Yeah,
CNN leaned in on this.
Reposted them. Right.
And took a look. In late October, he retweeted a false claim that the United Nations Agenda 21, which is a sustainable development program, would create a one-world church where Christianity was prohibited and that choosing nationalism was the only way to stop Hillary Clinton. In July, he linked to a tweet that claimed Hillary Clinton was wearing a hijab in solidarity with Islamic terrorists. In another instance, he linked to another fake news site questioning if an Iranian scientist was executed because he was exposed on Hillary Clinton's private email server. He's gone on and on and on of just not understanding how news works.
Right.
And he's the national security advisor.
And again, this is a guy that head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and he had created such problems that his fellow generals implored James Clapper, the director of intelligence, to fire him, which President Obama agreed to. Imagine the tension. So his fellow generals don't trust him. They consider him a hothead. Imagine the tension that's going to create between the White House and the Defense Department with Michael Flynn as a national security advisor. Two very, very troubling appointments on the part of President-elect Donald Trump. And that's just for openers, folks. So any idea, any thought, right, that we're going to see a more mellow Donald Trump and a more establishment or more rational kind of administration, out the window with these two appointments. 866-55-PRESS. Chime in on Jeff Sessions and Michael Flynn Yeah, if you believe in the Constitution, fasten your seatbelts, man. It's going to be a rough 4 years coming up.